live right now. There's Caleb. Hello, Caleb.
He's plugging in.
Hello, Caleb.
What's up?
What's the word? That's Bridget and Alan.
Hello.
Caleb.
How are y'all?
All right. So this is how I want to get into it. Y'all are gonna have to be patient for about 5 to 7 or 8 minutes because I like to get into the show. We're gonna have the intro. We're gonna get everything going, and we're gonna kind of pick up where we left off. Scott and Dean, Scott and Caleb were not with us last year, so I'm gonna have some fun to kind of get the thing started and get it rolling. Yeah, last week. Scott and Caleb. Did you? Yeah, last week. Did you hear what we said about y'all?
No, we don't listen to the show. We don't have to.
One of the would you rathers was, would you rather, and this was from one of our listeners, would you rather spend the day fishing with Caleb on a tower boat or Scott on a skiff? And Dean goes,
I'm glad they didn't listen.
Well, I'm about to repeat it. And Dean goes, we went back and forth, kind of pros and cons on both of y'all. And Dean goes, well, Scott, he's kind of boring.
I said it wasn't a matter of the mode of transportation. It was who I wanted to listen to all day long.
Yeah, exactly.
Scott is passive aggressive and Caleb is just aggressive.
Yeah, that's how we put it. That's how you put it.
So which one did we choose?
Okay, so first of all, Caleb, I said I think I would go with Caleb because he would be MFing me up one side and down the other. But I can deal with that and I can give it back. And my what was my criticism? Well, that was my criticism of Caleb. And then my pro and con on Scott was I would love to fish with Scott, but I guarantee you he would be like nitpicking every little. No, you need to do it this way. You should try this or
No, I don't. I wouldn't do that to you.
See, that's exactly what we're saying.
I just make fun of you.
Yeah, that too. So we're going to give you guys equal time by asking the question, would you rather fish with me or Dean? And then you can just torch us and rip us. And it's a good lighthearted way to get into the podcast. And then we'll get Bridget and Alan on here, probably going to keep you guys on for about 10 minutes or however long. There's no time limit on this. And then we're going to let you go and we'll continue the podcast. So you guys good with that?
Perfect.
Sure.
Okay, well, here we go. Welcome in. I am John Lopez. That is Captain Scott Knoll. That is Captain Caleb McCumber. And that fella over there with the hat is Captain Dean Thomas. This is the Bite Me podcast. You hear us every week. Wherever you get your podcast, don't forget to subscribe. And you watch us every week if you can break away from work or at least put some headphones on or you're doing nothing at home or on the boat on YouTube. We record this live on YouTube every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. ish. And so if you're joining us, we appreciate it. Don't forget, we get your comments live here if you're watching us live on YouTube, and we get your comments and questions via anywhere you get social media, anywhere you get this podcast via social media or on the Bite Me group page, which we encourage you guys to join. Great community. And I have a hunch we're gonna have a lively podcast today. Some of the topics, of course, believe it or not, there is something that all fishermen can agree on. Maybe not, but I believe it is. Some of the lures that make uncommitted fish strike. In other words, what are your wake 'em up lures? You guys know what mine is, but we'll go from there. Fly fishing, man. I got some texts from Scott this week that were off the chain, man, and I just sounded like a millennial. But some of it might be a great time to go fly fishing. He's going to tell us why, or learn fly fishing, or pick it back up. Another holdover question. That's a holdover question. The one about uncommitted fish striking from last week that we didn't get to. Another one from last week that we didn't get to was chumming. It's not something you see a lot in Texas, but I know our guys have seen it in Florida and other places. And we got, of course, all kinds of other stuff to do as well. But I want to start right here before we bring on some special guests that we have that I think a lot of fishermen are going to get a big kick out of it. I know this is near and dear to a lot of our captains. I said a lot. I meant Scott and Dean. Caleb, I'm not sure on you. That's the only reason I left you out. We'll get to them in just a few minutes. But equal time, man. You know, I always say this on my day job, on my radio show in Houston. I don't like to say anything behind someone's back that I wouldn't say in front of them. So here we go. If you remember last week, we had a game that we usually play, Would You Rather? And it has to do with lures and such, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the questions we got from the live audience here on YouTube was, would you guys rather fish with Caleb in a tower boat or Captain Scott in his skiff, poling? And long story short, we gave the pros and cons and some of the reservations we might have with both of them. I believe I said Caleb would be bleeping me up one side and down the other, and that might just get a little harsh as it is wont to do with Caleb captaining. But I can deal with that, and I can try to dish it back. My do's and don'ts were obviously with Scott. He's awesome, and he's a great fisherman in some of the backwaters and poling and all that. But I would just be worried that, you know, every time I tried something, he'd be like, well, you know, you might want to try this, and well, you might want to think about that, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, Dean, what were yours on Caleb and Scott?
Well, in the short version of the story, because I elaborated a little bit last week, was the mode of transportation, whether poling skiff or tower boat, was not the issue with these two guys. It was who did I want to listen to all day long. And I think I abstained. I don't even remember if I actually came up with a conclusion after all of my.
I don't remember, to be honest.
All of my.
I believe the word boring came out of your mouth.
But passive aggressive, I think, is more proper for Scott. And then Caleb, of course, is just aggressive. So it's choose your poison with those two.
Yeah. Now, so we got to ask them. I think I know the answer for both of our guys, but fair is fair, and I want to hear what they have to say. I'm going to start with Caleb. Would you rather fish with me on my Freedom Warrior doing whatever the heck it is that I do, or would you rather fish with Dean doing whatever the heck it is that Dean would do?
Man, that would be a tough one, but we do have it documented that I can outfish both of you.
Oh God.
So it's really a toss up. I'm gonna see, and not only can I outfish both of you are in Rockport, so we're gonna go get tacos at the same place. So my number 1 and 2 deciding factors are already
they're already off
here.
The board. Yeah.
Yeah. Man. You know, that's a tough one. I think I would equally enjoy fishing with the both of you. John got some good stories. John got good stories. So if the fishing sucks or it doesn't, he has dirt on celebrities, and I like to hear about that. So
yeah,
as much as I love Dean, and I think Dean doesn't even know it, but I think we might be fishing together next week. I think we might be having to go with John for his stories.
All right. Scott, I've been waiting for this all week.
I choose Pat.
That's not the question. That was one of the points we made too. Scott's always looking for a loophole. He's always looking for a little loophole. That's not a good answer, sir. You are on trial here.
Should have been a lawyer the way he answered the question.
Exactly.
I fished with Dean all day before. Actually, all day to Dean, that means 11 o'clock.
Ouch.
So
and that's why me and Dean get along so good.
We get it done early.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One problem with fishing with John is I think if I went on John's boat, I'd still end up being a guide. That's the problem.
Oh, I think that's a shot.
I'd still end up working.
Good
you know?
Lord.
With Dean, I can relax.
I expected a lot, but I did not expect that. I'm not saying it's not fair. I'm not saying it's not fair.
Well, where do you think we should go?
Scott, what do you think, Scott?
Well, along the same lines, though, I mean, I like to fish a little longer than 11 o'clock most days. So I'd probably go with you, John, because I know you'd stick it out even if fish weren't biting. Dean just gives
All
up.
right.
He's going to
All
go,
right.
let's go get tacos.
Well,
Yeah.
and you got one of y'all that's going to talk about a stupid deer all day, and one of y'all is going to talk about the Texans all day, and I don't give a crap about either one of them.
I'm just glad neither one of y'all mentioned a popping cork.
Well, if Scott's guiding, you're on the back of the boat anyway, and if you're on the back of the boat with the popping cork, nobody cares about it.
Yeah. And if you go with Scott, you bring a taco for breakfast and then a sandwich for lunch.
Yeah, exactly. I'll
And
tell you what,
snack
I'm good with
food,
I'm good with the tacos, and that is not I know that's a stereotype, but I always bring the tacos.
I was going to say, John would probably feed me pretty good. And that'd be awesome.
You see, me and Dean eat a taco at 9 before we leave, and then we're still not that hungry at 11 when we get back.
Oh God.
Exactly.
Yep.
Oh Lord. All right. Well, I just want to give y'all equal time. For those who are watching live on YouTube, I saw one comment said we got to be on our best behavior. There's other people here, so at least until Bridget and Alan Berger are done educating us and answering our questions. So here's the deal. I had someone message me, as a lot of people do with topics, saying they love the podcast, and they said, you guys have always talked about, conservation and the ecosystem and et cetera, et cetera. Have you talked much about the Mid-Coast Sea Turtle Rescue Group, which is based in Port O'Connor, which is where Scott fishes out of, and we've all fished there, but Scott lives down there. I'm going to just kind of toss it and maybe get a couple of talking points going here with, I'll start with Bridget, because you were the name that was brought up to me by a listener that was familiar with your work. No offense, Alan. I know you do tons and tons and tons, but I'm going to start with her and this Mid-Coast Sea Turtle Rescue Group. Now, I'm going to start here. It started, I understand, Bridget, out of necessity after the big freeze. But what a lot of our listeners, and they're all fishermen, want to know is about the importance of it to what we do, to seagrass and oyster reefs. And a lot of our fishermen all over up and down the coast, and we broadcast from Florida to the tip of the Texas coast and a lot of eastern states, northeastern states. We have listeners all over the country, some all over the world, are going to want to know this. So let me start right there, Bridget. What kind of an open-ended question of what fishermen need to know and how you guys got started.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the most important. Why should you care? As fishermen, and somebody asked me that question not long ago, and of course, I just answered the cuteness factor because turtles are cute, right?
She even has one.
As a fisherman, there's some science behind this. I went to Dr. Chris Marshall up at Galveston, Texas A&M in Galveston. He runs the turtle hospital up there. And also Dr. Donna Shaver down at Padre Island National Seashore. And I asked them, what is the importance of these sea turtles? Why, what is the science? And the green sea turtles, which are the ones that we find cold stunned, it's a juvenile green sea turtle. They stay in our shallow bays because they're vegetarian and they're eating that seagrass. The seagrass only grows in those shallow bay systems. That's why we're seeing all these juvenile greens that get cold stunned. What are they doing? They're actually mowing the lawn. And I know many people have lawns and they mow them, and it maintains the health of that ecosystem. There are studies that they actually sent me. I read them over. I made some notes to myself because I'm not a scientist. And it was explained this way. When there's lack of sea turtles, they know this because of studies that were done in areas in Florida Bay and in Moreton Bay in Australia. These two areas were heavily impacted by overharvesting, and therefore no sea turtles were grazing on those grasses there. What ended up happening is the grass grows too long, And the grass blades shade the bottom, which causes basically root rot and a certain slime mold to grow up. And it's called a turtle grass wasting disease. And so the grasses eventually die. And because the long blades of grass also impair the currents, the circulation of the water is impaired. So it's unhealthy grass. And studies were done. They actually had a study that was to simulate. They took these meter squares and they did 30 plots, and they kept the sea turtles out, and then they measured, this went on for a year and a half. And, 16 months. Yeah, a year and a half. They undoubtedly unquestionably found that the seagrass health was much better in the grazed areas. So that's why you should care. Well, if you haven't made the connection yet, the seagrass beds are where it's a nursery for all your juvenile fish, your crabs. That's where they grow up. Without those seagrasses, they'd have no place to go. So that's why you should care, because it is the nursery for the fish you want to catch.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, that makes perfect sense. I hadn't really thought of it that way as to what they were doing. I was thinking more along the lines they were eating the moss and other growth that impeded the grass from growing. I wasn't really thinking about them chowing down on the grass.
Yep, that's their main. In our coastal areas here, now we don't have a lot of jetties here in Port O'Connor. We have the little jetty and the big jetty, but like down in Corpus, where they have the big jetty down at Port Aransas and Corpus, the green sea turtles also eat the algae off of those jetties. So just think, they're vegetarians. They eat these grasses and algae, and that's what they live on. So yeah, they on the algae as well.
Dean, I'm sitting here thinking like a fisherman. Okay, so more sea turtles, better fishing, but where we fish, there's grass everywhere, and it just makes sense, Dean, that for us as fishermen, that's something that's going to be really important. And we haven't really discussed ever on this show,
Well, there's a lot of links in the food chain. There's a lot of links in the ecosystem. Turtles are a huge part of that. The seagrass flats, the seagrass meadows here are vast and immense, and they're covered with turtles. I mean, there's every day as we're drifting along, especially in the spring and the summer, we're drifting over turtles. I mean, we have an abundance of them. Plus, we're right behind the pass, right behind the Port A jetties, which are covered up in turtles every day. I mean, you can go out there and see 20 or 30 turtles grazing on the seaweed that grows on the rocks. So yes, everything has its place in the ecosystem out there, and then you take one out of it and it's not hard to disrupt the system. So protecting all of those things is a multifaceted approach, from the grass to the turtles, the birds, the fish. It is all intermingled into one ecosystem.
Now, Alan, I know your organization is, correct me if I'm wrong, slightly different, and it works in conjunction with the Mid-Coast Sea Turtle Rescue. What can you offer to us from our perspective? We're fishermen.
No, I guess the Mid-Coast Turtle organization is embedded inside of San Antonio Bay Partnership.
Oh, okay.
And so our mission is the protection of that bay system, both Espiritu Santo and San Antonio Bay, essentially from the refuge to the pass. So
now, Caleb, I don't know if you have anything or not here.
I have a question, because I've never met a sea turtle expert, and I think this is probably the closest I'll ever get to it. Me and some buddies, we've been contemplating what happened to the grass in East Matagorda Bay. Just 1 year is gone, right? And one of my friends suggested that the turtles ate it all up. Is this something that they could do? Because I mean, East Matagorda, Yes or no, Mr. Burger, Mrs. Burger.
I don't know about that exact area, but I do know there have been a lot of turtles in that area found over the years during cold stunning events.
Mhm.
Now, turtles are not the only thing that impact seagrass. Some of the big players that impact is sedimentation,
Right.
comes down the rivers, and lack of freshwater inflow. If when you have those two factors, it's like if you just took a bunch of ash and put it over your lawn, or you put saline water on your lawn, it's gonna kill those seagrasses.
Well,
So
yeah.
like Dean said, it's actually not a chain, it's a web.
Mhm.
All of these factors are very complex. So the lack of seagrasses. Now, are you aware that there's a seagrass viewer program on the internet by Parks and Wildlife?
no, ma'am.
I was
Yeah.
not.
So the data on that, if you drill down, you can drill down the entire coast. It's a Texas Parks and Wildlife seagrass viewer. You can Google that. And you can drill down to these bay systems. That's how I know, where am I going to look in a cold stunning event? Where are these turtles going to be? When that north wind blows, they get stunned. And yes, they will be blown up into those north facing shorelines, the back of Matagorda Island, but also behind show water in those pockets up there that line the back of the intercoastal out of Port O'Connor and Seadrift here. There's a bunch of seagrass beds there. And so we target looking in there because they'll get cold stunned. They're not able to go to deeper water. Sometimes depends on how quickly the cold front comes in. But that seagrass viewer will tell you where those seagrass grass beds are. Now, like I said, when I looked at it, I kind of looked at my area here in Port O'Connor, but I'll have to look closer to East Matagorda Bay. If you drill down, you can see the dates on that. And, they're out there surveying. And I'm sure you guys all know that it is illegal to run your motor across and create a track with your motor across seagrass beds.
Dean.
well, I've seen some tracks myself. This is for either one of you, whichever you feel would be the best answer. Because I think for our listeners, for our viewers, we come across sea turtles. I mean, we see them. Sometimes we see, you've mentioned stunning events. We see that. Sometimes we see on the beaches. I don't know what the proper term is, but the babies, having a hard time getting to where they need to get. What do we need to know? Do we need other than taking your class? But I mean, what do we need to do when we come across turtles that are maybe in these situations?
Call
on the stranded ones. Bridget will tell you who to call.
You call 866-887-8535 or 866-TURTLE-5. That's a coast-wide number. And then you listen to the dial 1 for this, dial 2 for that. When you dial 3 for Matagorda, Espiritu Santo, and San Antonio Bay, you get my cell phone. I have a network of 80 volunteers, about half of which are boat captains, and we will go out there and help that turtle. Even if you see dead turtles, it's very important for us to go out there and document them because that has a reflection on the abundance of the turtles and the demise of the turtle. This past year, since January 1, we have documented 40 dead turtles in my region. We had a slight cold stunning event last February. We had 2 cold stunned turtles. It wasn't even declared a cold front, but I knew by watching those water temperatures that we were going to have some turtles out there. And we did bring in 2 turtles. We all year round, we find stranded turtles. East Matagorda Bay, speaking of which, I've had probably 5 out of the 7 live turtles over the spring, summer, and fall that we have rescued washed up on East Matagorda Bay. They were either injured or ill. And now these are not greens. These are loggerheads. Last year, there was a record number of loggerheads that were stranded. I mean, record number. There were hundreds along the Texas coast. And none of the experts really know what caused that. The commonality was that they were all emaciated. Their lab values were very poor. They were very underweight, and many of them died. But anytime you see a turtle on the beach, give us a call.
Hey,
All right. Go ahead. Anybody who has, that's what I was going to say. Anybody who has anything, jump in.
Yeah, well, see a live turtle when I'm out fishing. I mark it on an app called I See Turtles. It's a phone app, and then it goes to I don't know, Texas A&M somewhere for research on what the turtle populations are. Takes 2 seconds to do it.
And it's anonymous. It's not like you have to create an account or put your name in or nothing.
Dean,
And I have a quick- What's that, Caleb?
you know why whenever there's turtles stunned in the water that you're not supposed to pick them up, you're supposed to call somebody else?
Yes.
Because there's no way to put that turtle on the boat without smashing your fingers. Can't do it.
We're not concerned with your fingers, but I do have a legitimate question. What water temperature will stress the turtles, or is it a condition where the water temperature drops drastically? Can they adjust to cooler temperatures if it's a slow drop, or what actually causes them the most distress?
Excellent question. So when they declare a cold stunning event, this is a Dr. Philip Tussaud out of Corpus Christi A&M. He does these modelings, and we don't have modelings for our bay, but I keep my eye on those water temperature buoys out of Port O'Connor, Seadrift, Port Lavaca, and the Refuge. When that water temperature drops to 46.6 and stays there for 24 hours, that's a cold stunning event.
Okay.
They can go to they can go to deeper water. It, like you said, if it's a rapid onset and it plummets, that it's the water temperature, not the air temperature. Because if you watch, and I watch those, when the tide comes in, that water temperature will rise, that warm air, that warm water from the Gulf, and then it will go back down as the tide goes out. But if it stays under 46.6 for 24 hours, then we start sending boats out there to search for the turtles.
Before I get your important information, how our thousands of listeners can help or do what you're doing, whatever their interest is. Anybody else have anything for Bridget and or Alan? We're good?
Oh.
All right, Bridget, tell us your organization, how anybody who wants to get involved can get involved.
So we are the Mid-Coast Sea Turtle Rescue. Now, we are just one of 5 or 6 rescues along the Texas coast, but you can feel free to contact me if you're in a different area. Contact me if you're in my area. You can write to me at Mid-Coast Sea Turtle Rescue @gmail.com, or you can call me 713-825-1929.
I forget my number too. I forget mine. Well, you guys, we've all come across them. Go ahead, Scott.
So if there is a stranding event, say you're out there fishing, you start noticing them. I've been out there and done that. It's not legal to pick up the turtles unless you've been trained, correct?
Well, here's my loophole. I am allowed.
Good. I like loopholes.
I heard Scott.
He's the king of the loopholes.
Right. I heard Scott was really good for that loophole thing. I can deputize people, which means I tell you over the phone, or like if there's a cold stunning event and you want to come to my house, I can give you some supplies and things, but I can tell you how to hold the turtle, where to bring the turtle, so that you do it safely. Not for you, because he's cold stunned. He's not going to bite you or anything, but turtles breathe air like we do. So the important thing is to hold the turtle with his head down, because if there's water, he's been in that water floating around. He can't move himself. So he may have water in his breathing system. And if you hold him like that, guess what? It's going to go down in his lungs, called pneumonia, or kill him. So you always want to hold him down. But I can deputize you. You find a stranded turtle during a cold stunning event, just call me, either my personal number or the 866 Turtle 5 number, and I will deputize you, and you can bring them in for me. I'll tell you where to bring them, and we'll have runners there to transport those turtles.
Cool. I've always wanted to be a deputy.
And don't smash your fingers when you set them down.
Exactly.
They're heavy.
That's what I learned
heavy.
today.
I didn't.
All right,
I
Bridget.
didn't pick one up though.
Hey,
Bridget here.
I just want to say thank you to you guys and your network. I mean, the volunteers that people give freely all their time to make that happen is pretty amazing. So thank you very much for what you guys do.
Well,
Yes.
My understanding that there's a class that you can take.
Well, annually, in order to be on the federal permit, they're endangered species. There is our state coordinator is Dr. Donna Shaver. She creates the rules, and every October she provides training to get on that federal permit for the year. The deadline is over for this season, but like I said, I can deputize you over the phone during a cold stunning event. If you are interested in becoming a regular volunteer, let me know. I'll put you on the list. Next October, we get you trained, we get you on the permit, and then you're on our list of people to call when we do have a cold stunning event.
Cool.
And what was your phone number one more time?
Man, I know give it one more time. It's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. My personal number is 713-825-1929. Can we put in another plug for one of our other programs that is actually coming up in February?
It cut out for me, or did it cut out?
No, I was going to make a plug for another activity that fishermen can participate in.
I don't know.
Did it cut out for you guys or cut out for me? I can edit this.
No, you're the only one that's cutting out for, I think.
Okay.
What was your plug for other fishermen?
The abandoned crab trap removal program, middle of February 16th to the 17th.
All right, are we good?
A program really initiated
Okay.
by the CCA folks, and
Okay, so-
it's good work.
I think John's got some problems with his
No.
his internet today. We're going to blame that on Delaney.
Yeah, that was
And,
mine, but I think you guys have me now. I
As
can
soon as
fix this.
John commented
I will
on how
edit. I
good
never
the
have-
internet today is.
I never have internet problems, but I do today. I was
while you were gone,
commenting on
John.
that. All right,
was talking
Bridget and
about
Alan. Go ahead.
Okay, while you were gone, he was talking about the
Go ahead,
crab trap
Scott.
cleanup. That's where he
I was just
Oh,
that's
making
where he
a,
went with that.
just making a
Okay,
plug
I'll
for that. The Espiritu Santo, the San Antonio Obispo is a big place, and we never have enough boats to cover it and pick up all the traps. It's tough weather sometimes during February, but we have a day picked out, February the 17th, where it's gonna be a public day. If you can't make it, then come out and rest anytime during that 10-day period, starting February
Okay.
16th. We'll be trying to pick up traps.
And we have a big
All right,
party.
very good.
Good.
Look, you have a party. I want to know about a party.
Well, anybody who comes out on that week is invited to a party. The party's planned in Port O'Connor on the 17th, the evening of the 17th, and free meal and live music, 2 beverages. So come help us, if not for cleaning up the bay, then for the party.
John didn't hear anything about the crab trap cleanup, but he heard party.
Yeah.
I got it. It'll be on the recording. It'll be on the recording. I can clean that up. All my internet did was screw me out of some editing time. So I'm going to eat a later dinner tonight. But it'll sound great once we get it posted on all the sites that post our podcast. But you guys are great. We could actually, I don't know about these other 3 guys, but I know they all thank you like I do, as Dean did, and I could go on and on about this because this is stuff that, you know, in our podcast is going to be very important for our listeners and everything else. We're going to let you guys go now, but I know we could maybe revisit this as events happen, as events that you guys are having happen, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
John, we have to work on your settings on the chat, by the way, dude. About 60% of the comments
What is
that
that?
I post say, no, we're not putting that up there. All this
Really?
talk about it, all this talk about deputies and people asking we get badges and deputy this. All I wanted to say was what's important is if you did or did not, in fact, shoot the deputy. And I have wrote it with OO. I have spelt it like a bucking shoot, and Google is so far ahead of me. But every
I'll
week,
do that.
about 60% of my comments just like, no, we're not going to put that up there.
All right. I'll
Might
add that.
Might
That was
not be
pretty
a bad
cool,
thing.
man.
I like turtles.
It might be that they know who's doing it. Yeah, that was cool. I learned something. See, you learned something on this. You learned something on this podcast.
What I learned
All
is
right,
we have a bunch
let's
of
get
derelicts.
let's get to some fishing.
Wait a minute. What did Caleb learn today?
What I've learned is we have a bunch
That
of
what?
derelicts listening to this show because my text messages are blowing up with turtle questions, such as, do they know who originally stuck the straw in the turtle's nose? And just stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not saying that to turtle experts. I'll say that to Dean. I'm not saying that to turtle people. You lost your mind?
You've seen a turtle with a straw stuck up his nose?
No,
Well,
you
that's
don't wanna do
that's
that.
why they had cardboard straws in California is for the turtles. One got it stuck up his nose. Donatello fell off the wagon, Dean. That's what we're talking about.
Donatello.
I get it. I get it now.
Oh boy. All right, boys. I like that. I hope our listeners did too. Let's get to some fishing topics here. Lures that make uncommitted fish strike. I'm not even going to say anything. You know what mine is. But the question came from a listener, and then I was sent a link that from the LouisianaSportsman.com talking about some lures that they go to. Not a when all else fails, but maybe one that can kind of shake them up, wake them up, etc. What are the Scott? I'm gonna start with you. What are the environments that you would do this, and what are your go-to lures?
I just go with the top water, loud banging top water. Yeah, if things are just dead and not happening, that might stir something up. And if they're not really feeding hard, it'll at least get them to swirl on it. And then you know that there's some activity. You can follow up with the soft plastic, maybe start catching some fish. But my experience, when it's dead, it's pretty dead. There's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no sense in beating it.
Yeah,
I mean, I call the top water.
Caleb, I was just going to ask about
the top water is the fish finder. I mean, you might not catch them, you might not get them to hit it, but it just agitates them a little bit. And just like Scott said, you get a swirl, you get a follow, you wake them up or push them around a little bit, and it's just a confidence builder. It lets you know they're there, even if you're going to end up with disrespect in the end.
That's right. Total disrespect. I don't like to just ask all three of you guys the same question, so I'm going to put a little layer on this for you, Caleb.
I spent the last 45 seconds coming up with my answer, and
Well,
now you're just going to take that away from me. No, ask me the question, John. Ask me the question. But layer it, John.
You threw it out there. Now we all want to know. We have to know.
Oh, okay. Top waters.
I didn't hear that before.
With trout, it's top waters. With redfish, I'll go to a wake bait a lot. I like to me that the wake bait's kind of doing the same thing as the top water, but it's a little bit more subsurface and a little bit more likely for them to put out and hit it more so than a top water.
And none of y'all are going to admit to the popping cork.
Negative.
I use popping corks when they're slow.
Yeah, that's how I really started using it 30 years ago. I did. That's my go-to line. Let's wake them up. Let's wake them up, man. They can't resist it. It drives them nuts.
How about this? You spend all that time trying to figure out what to use, and then the dude beside you goes, "You know what? Let's put another layer on this."
Here's the layer I was going to put. That was part of it. But I have a hunch that Nick Mosley's going to get wind of this sea turtle conversation. Just a hunch. Just a
I'm
hunch.
texting him.
But but you know who really turned me on to popping corks probably 30 something years ago was Nick's dad, Joe Mike. Yeah, and he was one of the kings of the popping cork for sure.
Hey, they work, and I used them until you started liking them so much, and now I just can't.
It's just a mental block now.
Yeah,
It's just a mental block for you.
I used to occasionally enjoy to listen to a little bit of Vanilla Ice until Scott started talking about it. Now I just can't.
So when you go fishing with John on his boat, what are you going to throw?
If I'm when I remember when I came with you, I didn't bring any tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, either I'm throwing popping corks or I'm bringing tackle. Apparently.
Again, I feel like I need to say this every week. Maybe 20%. Let me ask you, Dean. I fished with you recently. How many times do you see me throw a popping cork?
Me?
Yeah. No, Dean.
Once.
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 I was working that over. I was just making sure one was the right answer.
Well, it's not a test.
I was trying to remember what I forgot.
Yeah, every once in a
D,
while.
all of the above.
Yeah, exactly.
You fish with me?
Hey, Scott, you were on some redfish, man. You were on some redfish big time, and it was on a day when a lot of people weren't catching them. Explain yourself.
Yeah, I was messing with you while you were on the air. That's
Yeah,
why I
you
was
were.
sending you pictures.
Yeah, you were.
That's one of my favorite
Fish.
things to do. Absolute
God, I hate
favorite
that.
things to do is I look at the clock and I say, "Oh, John's on air. This will be fun."
Yeah,
And,
it's fun for me. It's just a
yeah,
blast.
so I start sending him pictures. Y'all should do that, Dean.
I do,
Hey,
man.
look-
I think of just random, arbitrary questions when I know he's intently focused, and I fire away.
And you were sending some delicious looking venison, man. I was having a hard day yesterday. I
Yeah,
was on 3
yeah,
hours sleep. I was on 3 hours sleep because I had to sleep in the airport coming back from New York.
I
And
turn
I'm
on the
just
show and I make sure it's at a really messed up time, and that's when I send it.
But the
Now,
story here. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I had a fella in from Georgia, and we fished on Saturday for the pre-front, and the pre-front was just terrible. Just nothing really happening. I talked to several people, and nobody really seemed to do well on it. I don't know why. I thought it was going to be really good. Water wasn't all that high for a pre-front. We had southeast winds, but the water didn't get up super high, and I just felt like, man, we were going to hammer it. Now, we caught a few. We saw a few. It just wasn't happening. We could see fish that wouldn't eat, and I'm not really positive about what that was. I mean, the barometer was low. Everything was right. I mean, according to y'all. And then and we were supposed to fish Sunday, but Sunday I woke up to 37 gusting to 43 out of the northwest, and I decided that it was probably not a good idea to go out that day. And so we went in bright and early Monday morning. They said it was going to be 43 degrees, and it was 32, and there was ice on my boat. It was not.
Ouch.
It was not a good start to the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked at the water levels, and they were down and still falling. We were going to have a sub-zero tide, and that got my brain working on where I'd been seeing fish in the backwaters, and the flats that were just outside those backwaters was the first stop I made. As soon as I shut the boat down, we were on top of fish, and it stayed that way absolutely all day long. Most of my trips end at 3:00, and we just kept going. We fished all the way till dark, watched the sunset. Sunrise to sunset, and it was good the entire time. I'd say that there probably wasn't a 5 to 10 minute period throughout the day that we weren't casting to a fish. They were doing everything. There were schools that were tailing. There were singles tailing. There was little pods moving around. There were bigger schools moving. Probably the biggest school we saw was maybe a dozen fish or so. None of the huge schools. But they were tailing. They had their backs out up in shallow water up against the bank. They were busting mullet. There was shrimp jumping. It was just one of those days that you dream about. Honestly, it was as good as it's been in a very, very, very long time. And water was low and clear. Hell, I stuck my poling skiff probably a dozen times poling across flats that I normally not on. So I don't really know that the depth changes. 6 inches to 4 inches is a big difference when you're in a poling skiff. But yeah, reds crawling around with their backs out was a lot of fun. This guy was fly fishing, and I lost count of how many fish he caught. I know he hooked a whole bunch more and broke off, and it was just one of them great days. Here's the kicker.
Fishing. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were fly fishing. They were eating lots of little stuff. I could see little bitty shrimp popping all over the place. And when I got back to the dock, there was another group coming in right at dark, and one of the guys said, "Man, that was tough out there today. How'd you do?" And I just kind of did one of those. I said, "Well, honestly, we smoked them." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Where at?" And I said, "All over the place. We bounced around a few times, and everywhere we stopped, it was good." I said, "They were up super, super shallow." And he said, "Yeah, we saw some up shallow, and we waded in on them. We were throwing at them, and we just couldn't get them to eat. They wouldn't eat anything." And I did not have that experience at all. These fish were aggressive, eating flies just left and right, but we were throwing little bitty flies that imitated the shrimp that were out there. And I asked him what he was throwing, and they were throwing big soft plastics. They were throwing paddle tails, and so it was one of those times when the fly was going to way outfish the conventional just because of the size of the bait and what they were keying in on. The other point that I would like to make is if you look at all my pictures of those fish that I was sending you, it is a bright, bright, bright blue sky. And I'm pretty sure that the barometer was extremely, extremely high all day.
I really not even paying attention to what you're talking about right now. I bought
What
this.
are you laughing at?
I bought this screen that goes underneath my computer monitor. So I'm always back here in the back of my house in the studio, and it records my front porch. And the reason I jump up and took off is because I looked down and Steve is hanging off the Amazon driver's pants. And I had to go there and break this up. I left the front door open so they could come and go. And there was sheer pandemonium going on my porch.
He thought there was some doggy biscuits in that box, and there was not.
You think after 5 years, Jack Earls are supposed to be smart. You think after 5 years, he would realize that dude really comes here every day and nothing seemed to happen.
So before I get to Dean, how was the bite in the water for you, Caleb, this week? Because I'm sensing a theme with the small baits and the clear water.
The bite was pretty good for us. We were wade fishing for trout. It was me and Wayne Davis and Larry and a couple people, and the bite was pretty stinking good. And then that wind Scott was talking about hit and kind of shut it down. We were in pretty clear water, and I didn't have any flies in my wading box, but we went to it's called there's a day glow and a pistachio quirky. It's like a kind of a really green, clearish color. And that did pretty well. We caught some good fish, caught some big fish. And that's pretty well my experience with the water this week.
Dean, I asked Scott this, but I'm going to ask you because I know you fly fish as well. Is this just a better time to go fly fishing with the conditions that we're experiencing right now?
I mean, it's not a particular season or month that's good. I mean, you have great days throughout the year. You have great fly fishing days 12 months out of the year. It's just, timing, and then there's a skill level involved. We have guys that are amazing casters that they take the challenge of battling the conditions and still can lay the line out there. If you're not a really experienced fly caster, the tough days are going to be more challenging. It may be a little more discouraging. But there's not a real month or season that is better than the other.
Scott?
I mean, we catch fish on flies year round, but there are certain times when I feel like the fly will outfish soft plastics. And I think yesterday was just one of those days. Up on the flats anyway, where we're fishing for these redfish in 6 to 8 inches of water. They were somewhat spooky. If you splatted it down a little too hard, a little too close, you could spook them pretty easy. So I would imagine those guys throwing soft plastics at them were spooking them pretty good. Plus, they just weren't keyed in on that. They were keyed in on something small, and it's damn near impossible to throw something that small, even with a little light spinning gear.
All right, so here's I don't know if it's a dumb question or not. I believe Scott and I talked about this a while back, but Dean, I'm going to start with you on this one, then go to Caleb, because the question came from somebody who was in Florida fishing, and they were chumming, and they do that a lot.
How come I didn't get to answer the question about how fishing was this week?
Oh,
Yeah.
because I'm just assuming it was good.
I spent 45 seconds composing my answer.
And he wonders why we don't read the rundown. Like, we never
Here's
get that
the thing.
question.
No, here's the thing. Caleb was saying 45 seconds like it was a lot. Like I spent 45 seconds trying to get an answer together.
Working on this,
That's not
man.
a lot. That's like cramming for a final.
Well,
That's about
also
as
how
long
long
as
I
he can
spent-
concentrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's the fishing, Dane?
I didn't go fishing this week.
That's a worse answer than Caleb's. you were shooting deer, man.
I was deer
That
hunting,
looked-
so I didn't
that
go
looked fun.
fishing. But I
Yeah.
did go today.
And
It was amazing. It was great.
really?
Yes, yeah. Caught huge reds, speckled trout. Started out slow, but had a great day today. I'm actually, as we were talking, I was composing my post for the Facebook page.
Oh, good.
So I really,
Good.
So I wasn't listening to Scott's answer.
Scott, do you ever feel like you're being attacked or ignored? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One guy left the screen. The other one was looking off into space somewhere, doing something else.
It's funny. We've seen some transitions in this show. Whenever Mr. and I'm not saying this to be rude, Bergen, the last name?
yeah, Bergen.
Bergen. When Mr. and Mrs. Bergen left and we just take off, it's like when the teacher left the room. And then,
Oh yeah.
and then when me and Dean are going to sleep over here, it's like when the teacher came back in the room.
And then when my internet buffered, all hell broke loose.
Well, we all went to school back in the day at dial up and LimeWire, so we're used to a little bit of that when we're doing school analogy.
LimeWire reference. I like that. So chumming. So the question came: went fishing in Florida, Dean. I guess they have those little, they look like little wiffle ball things or whatever, and they throw chum. And it was a very simple question. Scott and I talked about this, but I'm going to ask you: why not? Why not chumming here? What's the, is it the bait? Is it just a habit? Is it just something a Florida thing, or what?
Well, it may be just a Florida thing. You know, culturally, regions can be very different. But I don't see why it wouldn't work. I mean, I know the guys that the rank amateurs that fish with shad that have no skills whatsoever. They fish with cut shad when they're available, and that thing puts a slick in the water. It puts a huge scent trail, and it will attract fish. So I don't know. Maybe we have better skilled fishermen in Texas that Florida does not possess.
53 minutes and 19 seconds is how long we made it today before getting a warning from the umpire.
You ever chum,
I don't know. I guess chumming would work, but it just doesn't happen here. I know people in Florida, they go through a lot of effort. They smash up shrimp and they make them in these little dough balls and they put them out there. I mean, I don't know.
But the guy was fishing with lures, but they were chumming with the little, like you just described.
I don't know. Were they fishing for crabs or something?
I don't know.
You put a chicken neck on a string and you get buku crabs.
So down in Belize and a lot of those bone fishing places, they'll cut holes in cat food cans and throw them around on the flat. They don't show you that part when they're doing all of that. I actually know some guys that chum in
Really?
Port O'Connor for redfish. They'll throw out a bunch of chum on a shoreline, and they swear it works. And I elected to be one of them no fishing son of a guns that Dean so kindly talked about at 53 minutes and 19 seconds. I had a bunch of kids on my boat, and I go back in this back lake, and it's kind of slow, and I'd gotten mullet for them. They're throwing cut mullet, and I thought, you know what, about to happen. And so I take that mullet and I mash it up and I sling it all around the boat everywhere. And in about 2 minutes, I see a boil over here and a boil over there, and I'm like, oh, you kids, hold on. And the first one, man, that rod lays over and breaks it off. And I was like, man, I'm telling y'all, these redfish back here, they're big ones. Yeah, let me get you tied back up there, Junior. And he throws back out again, and what, in 30 seconds, and both the kids' rods lay over. And I'm like, oh yes, I done did it. There it is. It was like one of the little CCA kid tournaments, and we have at least 2 12-pounders on. Like, these suckers are running. And I found out that you can chum the hell out of gar, apparently, in Back Lake. Because my boat, it looked like the Disney cartoon, that critter in the moat on Sword in the Stone. There's a bunch of my boat was surrounded in them suckers. I had to leave because I tried to chum.
Scott, what are your thoughts on this? We've had this discussion, I want to say a couple of years ago.
Part of it's culture. You know, they grow up doing it down there, but also I think it's as much about a bait availability. They have all those pilchards, and those guys throw cast nets continuously to catch all these pilchards. And you'll hear them talk about it. You know, they blacked out their live well in 3 throws or 2 throws or whatever. That's a big badge of honor over there.
Yeah.
To how much bait they can catch. But I watched them. Dean and I watched them doing it. They take one of those kids' fungo bats, a real big.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Big
Yeah,
plastic one. They cut the end of it off and they fill it up with pilchards, and they shake the hell out of it to stun the pilchards, and then they use that to sling them. And they throw them up under the mangroves, and all the snook come out and eat. And then they hook on a live pilchard and throw it up there, and they catch fish. The area that Dean and I had fished, we caught a lot of snook the first year, and we didn't see any boats doing that. The second year we came back, there was a couple of boats doing that. We could not catch a fish on lure. It just wasn't happening. Talked to some guide and some other buddies of ours over there, and they were like, yeah, anywhere that there's chumming going on, you're not going to catch them on lures. Those fish are trained.
And if you think that fish don't learn, those dudes would pull up there and bang the bucket on the side of the boat, and the fish were tuned in. They knew that banging noise meant that fish were fixing to fall from the sky.
Do we have pilchards here?
I don't think so. It's them greenbacks.
I've never noticed them.
Yeah, well, we do, but they're called shad.
Yeah, exactly. So Caleb, I don't know if this was directed at you or not, but this is the question. I have some dings, nicks, slightly bent tips, but is my boat okay to run? He's talking about his prop. he says what is fine to run and what is not?
That's right up there with looking for recommendations for someone to repaint my skeg because it has scratches on it. It's like, you have a skeg?
That's right.
When I get new boats, I always look at them and they look stupid because the skeg's so long. I'm so used to not seeing one there.
So how do you run your prop?
I run it till I run it.
It doesn't take long.
It look at that. Rainbow Sprinkles changed his name. We still don't know what that means, Rainbow. I have to have a seriously folded over tip to get a new prop. The thing about scratches and dings and dents is you keep running them, those are all going to go away because the sand's just going to shave that piece of metal right off of there. It just, as long as I'm not.
I don't know about that as a piece of advice or not.
I mean, it'll do it. It'll do it, and then you can. And if you mind your P's and Q's and run through some sandbars and stuff and get that out of there, then you can sell that prop as like in great shape.
This is bizarre
But-
logic.
No, until I'm losing, I go more off of if I'm just banging the rev limiter super duper easy, or if I have a severely, I'm talking that tip better be bent 90 degrees before I'll really worry about getting a new one. And I'm not really into taking them and getting them reworked because it seems like once you get them reworked, they last about half as long as they did the first time anyway. But yeah, no dents and dings and stuff.
Are you sure it's the reworking?
Like there's two things I don't change, guys. Line on my reels and props on my boat. That you'll get there. Just keep pushing forward. You'll be all
But
right.
you do change lower units occasionally.
Well, see, whenever nature changes it for me, then I'll do it. I mean, that's clearly a sign it was time to get a new one.
Well, that makes total sense, of course.
But
I
here-
believe
here's the funny part. I don't lose my $1,000 props. I lose Daniel's $5,000 props.
Oh
Well, as long
That
as
works
it's
out.
anybody else's props is better. I knocked a dent in a propeller a few months ago. Took it to the same guy where I took John's prop that was folded over. The shaft was bent, which there's a whole nother story on how that all worked out. It's back in commission now. But I took a prop over there that had a little ding in it. I mean, to me, it looked pretty serious. I thought it was. Took it to the prop guy. He says, I'll be happy to charge you $300 to weld this up. But he took a hammer, tapped it out, smoothed it out. He said, that'll be just fine. He said, it's not going to be detrimental to the way that the thing runs. So, I mean, you can get away with a lot of dents and dings in a prop before. I mean, if it's not vibrating, if it's not out of balance, if you can go back there and spin the propeller and the shaft is straight, I mean, it's going to be just fine.
I mean, the shaft got to be pretty straight. Back in my younger years,
I'm looking at Scott as this discussion is going on. He has such a look of disgust on his face. Finish your point, and then Scott, jump in.
In my younger years, I did take I took it to Dependable Machine in Bay City, and not because I'm endorsing anyone. I don't even know any of their names. And there was one prop that the dude, after I'd taken it a couple of times, like he handed it back to me and said, "Please don't bring this back in again. Like there's nothing else I can do for it."
Scott, I feel like I'm listening. When I listen to Caleb, it's kind of like, do as I say, not as I do. I don't even know if that's right. What? But you're back there. You run your boat. You're not afraid to run a little bit. What's your kind of rule of thumb?
Kind of the same thing. If it starts losing some performance, then I know I've worn it down to a point that it needs to be replaced. But I don't typically hit a lot of hard stuff.
Yeah, you don't have as much hard stuff over there.
Yeah, well, I did in Galveston, but I didn't manage to hit it a whole lot. Yeah, things happen out there on the water. I mean, it's going to happen to you sooner or later. You run enough. I mean, I've screwed up a few props, and usually it's something submerged floating log has been my main culprit. I've hit those 2 or 3 times, but until that motor starts vibrating real bad, then you know you're pretty good. But always the difference is we run our boats so much that we can feel it.
Yeah,
we know when we're losing some power, when we're not getting up as fast. We know we've worn them down, and it's time to go ahead and change a prop. Your average weekend guy going out, he's either going to destroy a prop or he's never going to wear it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I refuse to even fish with people that won't destroy a prop. It makes me nervous to think somebody won't. And and that's the difference. Scott and I are redfish people. We don't care about that prop. The trout guys, they're real worried about going fast and all this stuff, and they'll get real concerned about that stuff. But there's really one rule of thumb that I've went by. I say at least for the past 6 or 7 years, and it's just don't look at your prop. Don't go check it out. Just like you
don't see it, it didn't happen.
The worst thing you can do is be out fishing and hit something and put your boat in the trailer and go look at it. If you don't look at it, it ain't there.
It didn't happen.
No.
Dean, how about
Caleb also turns the radio up? Caleb's that guy who turns the radio up in his truck.
I've actually changed games completely. I bought noise canceling AirPods and I'll wear them in my ears while I'm not even being a smartass. That's true.
Ignore it. Just ignore it.
John's prop was folded over on one blade, actually split in half. The prop shaft was bent a half an inch. I saw it on the dial indicator, 490 thousandths. He spun it and showed it to me, and he was still fishing in his boat. So I mean, how?
See, you could fish with me, Caleb.
You know, people can say all they want about your popping corks. You're all right, John.
I know how
So
to bend a prop and a shaft.
Yeah.
And for anybody who's interested with the bent shaft and broken pops, Coastal Welding is over here in Rockport. He took John's boat. When I took the propeller to him, I took it off. It was over the water. I was in a hurry. I didn't spin it. I took him the prop. The first thing he asked me is the shaft bent. I said, I should have checked it. I did not. He fixed the propeller. I put it back on the boat. I spun it. The thing wobbled like it was so bent. When you spun the prop, it like turned and then hung at the bottom center of it. I mean, it wouldn't even balance. So took the boat, and he actually, at the point, he told me that he had a way to straighten the prop shaft without removing the lower unit, without disassembling the lower unit. I took John's boat to the shop. He has a little machine where it goes on the splines, and it's got like a press. It's got a jack. So he goes to the bent side and he actually pushes it back in place. He said he had done hundreds like that before. I was not familiar with the process, but whenever it was complete, he showed me on the dial indicator, it's spinning at straight zero. Totally true. So for a bad accident, it was really it was less than $400 to straighten the shaft. And I think if you took that to the boat shop, to one of the boat dealers, they're going to tell you that you have to disassemble the lower unit and replace that
and wait 3 months.
If you're in the Rockport area and you hit the submerged shrimp boat motor over by Rantham Island, Coastal Welding is your people.
See, but we have here in the comments, Etus, aka Rainbow Sprinkles. I mean, dude, change your name to something we know what it means, man. But he is an actual engineer, and he says if it vibrates, run it harder until it smooths out again. Yeah, this man has been trained on how to fix stuff. We're just amateurs.
Like a bumpy road.
Yeah,
you go fast and you smooth them out.
Smooth it right out.
Again, this is advice. I don't know if it's the best advice.
It's free.
But it is advice. It is advice. I'm glad you gave him a shout out, Dean, because kudos to him and kudos to Dean, man. You talk about a friend. Like, dude, I didn't realize. I think I said this last week. I didn't realize it was messed up until I started just idling into the marina, and I felt the motor shaking, and I turned around and went, "Oh crap, I know what that is." Man, Dean got on his
because you turned around and looked.
I did when I turned around and looked. Oh,
if a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, John.
But Dean, like the next day, got on his boat, took my prop off. Then when the shaft needed to be done, he went back, took the shaft. I took the boat. Dude, man, I owe you some tamales. By the way, tamale parties
is easy, man. I mean, it's right here in the neighborhood. It's no sweat.
So you guys have got some tamales coming to you. For sure. But Dean probably get a couple more. You got to get a couple of extra ones there. All right. So what would Scott do? What would Caleb do? What would Dean do? I always look at the weather and the conditions, and I didn't do it. So I'm doing what you guys do as we speak. Scott?
I did. I looked ahead. I'm going to be working on my house.
That doesn't
pretty
sound
much
promising.
all week. Yeah, I was supposed to fish a couple of days this week, but 23 gusting to 31 straight east. That's one of the days. 21 gusting 27 all day. I mean, it's the same all day. You don't see that very often. Friday it dips down just a touch and it switches northeast. I'm talking for down here, and then Saturday. We're right back to what it was this past Saturday. 27 gusting to 33, 34. Sunday's not a whole lot better. And Monday afternoon. if you can get a chance to get out there Monday afternoon on the 18th, it looks like it's going to settle down a little bit. Got a little light north. But weekenders, I'm afraid this might be one of those weekends where you get your honeydews done so that you can maybe
Make
sneak
some
out the
ollies.
next weekend. Yeah,
Yeah,
make some
it's good.
tamales. Go to the deer lease. Go deer hunting for a little bit or something. But yeah, it's gonna be rough out there. Uh, there won't be any water left. 25 gusting to 33 out of the
Man.
northwest. Around here, there will be zero water. If you do end up deciding to go, plan accordingly and work your pathway out where you can duck some of that wind and find you some deep water adjacent to what used to have water on it. And the fish have to go somewhere, so they're going to fall off into those deeper holes. It's not really a cold front. I mean, it's only going to get into the 50s.
Yeah.
But there's a hell of a lot of wind with it.
But after this, I'm not going to put you guys both on the spot, even if you've spent 45 seconds preparing for this. But Caleb, I'll start with you. After this, you're going to have a lot of wind. The water's going to be out. Maybe the temperatures will drop down next week. What are you looking at?
First off, Chris would like to tell Dean he did a great job of straightening out your shaft. And we shall now call him Mr. Stiff and Quick. Hey, man, I don't know about
straightening out my shaft there, Dean.
That's Captain Stiff and Quick.
All I know is I listened to the last week's podcast so I could prepare myself to defend myself because I heard a few things, and y'all talked about pee hole way too long.
It's the pee hole. It's the telltale.
Way too long.
Oh boy,
did you just say tail hole?
Telltale. It's officially called a telltale.
Oh,
But
I
we all
thought
say
Scott said tail hole.
Well, maybe he did. Man, you know what's funny about this, Caleb? That nice couple that's doing God's work is going to go back and listen to this podcast, and they're going to say, "Well, that was really good. That was informative. I thought we handled it well." Then they're going to listen to the rest of the podcast, and they're going to be like, "We're never going on there again."
I feel like there's no shot they listen to the whole thing.
I hope they're going to turn it off after their part.
Yeah,
fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Shout out to the Speckled Truth podcast here. Chris Bush and I were talking this week about the similarity in our shows, and Chris quickly pointed out that there are zero similarities in our show because over on their show, they really dig into the logistics of fishing. On our show, we just tell a bunch of stories and hit some fishing every now and again. And I couldn't really argue with him. Like, no, there's really nice similarities here. Oh, good Lord, they're still listening.
We are in. They're still listening.
Oh, she's so polite. Now I don't trust anything she said about gerbils. She said, "You are great, love you." I don't trust any of it anymore. Anyway, back on task here. Back on task. Now that the burgers are here, let's all right, back on task. So every year I always had vacation left in December to burn, and I would burn mine in the middle of next week. We're gonna get some water pulled back out. I've got a couple of trips I got to run. I'm going to call those people and say, these are our days. I think it was Wednesday and Thursday are both single digit days after a solid Northwest. And that's what I would do personally. I wouldn't even go to the deer list this weekend. Deer not going to be on this crap. Deer don't even want to go outside.
Dean, you killed them. Give us a little rundown on that before we get out of here. How was your trip? You got some beautiful venison that you cleaned up.
Wait, you don't even want to know what Dean would do?
I know what Dean's going to do. He's going to sit on his porch and watch sports.
He's been thinking 45 seconds about this.
I can tell you what I'm not going to do, because as we are speaking, my guys for this weekend just canceled their trip due to weather.
That's because they're watching too.
Probably listening. They're like, "Did y'all hear that? Hurry up!" All they do. Now, it's gonna be brutal out there. And, the wind in the summer can be one thing, but the wind in the winter it can be a showstopper. So some days it's better to reschedule. And what was the other question?
Your deer,
what would Dean do?
It sounds like you both got some.
Oh yeah. Deer hunting. Deer hunting was awesome, man. So yeah, we were deer hunting in 86-degree weather in South Texas this weekend. It's pretty nice. 60 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon. It was quite pleasant. And the hunting was awesome.
Well, good
and
deal.
I was doing my best imitation of Scott Null. I I guided my first deer hunting trip. So I had a nice young lady in the blind, picked her out a beautiful buck that was mature, ready to go. She made a beautiful shot, and it was a fun experience.
Hey, did y'all is there a feeder in front of your blind?
There is a feeder, but we did not shoot this deer at a feeder.
Could that be considered chumming?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm sure it could.
We do chum.
I just
We
a
do
question. I'm working on some deer hunting skills, and I just had a question for the captain. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did also. We've been talking a few times about getting with Chandelier Charters and putting a Bite Me
Yes.
deal together. I talked to Troy this morning. He's on board with that. He's pretty booked up through like July, but he said, more towards late summer and into the spring, into the fall, he had some openings. He also mentioned that with that new Louisiana limit of 15, he was concerned because a lot of the people that go out there with him want to bring a bunch of fish home, and they've always had it where they could only keep 1 day limit on those boats. They go out there for 3 days, but they could only keep 1 day limit because it was considered a trip. He spoke with the commissioners and got a ruling on that, and he can now, for however many days he's out there, 2 or 3 or 4 days or whatever, they can have a limit for each day, so they can still bring home a lot of fish. Anyway, he wanted to throw that out there.
This is big. Well, let's work out some details off air because maybe we can all of us go, August, whenever, late July, whatever, whatever he's got, and we'll bring some listeners out there. Maybe have a real good time. You guys got anything you need to talk about besides that before we get out of here? Because this has been a fun show. And again, shout out and thank you to the burgers who are never going to speak to us again. But that's okay. You guys got anything?
Yeah, as far as hunting tips, it'd probably be pretty easy to put corn in a wiffle ball bat. Throw it out there.
Why not?
Throw it by the bushes. Deer will come out and eat it. Oh, got him.
Well, speaking of which, I'm not doing it next week, but I'm gonna get
I wish I would have thought of that.
Just throw some corn at them. That won't scare them at all. You can do it when you're bow hunting, Dean. Absolutely.
Even worse,
All
Santa's
right.
watching, not just Mr. and Mrs. Burger.
Yeah, and you're gonna get coal in your stocking.
Oh,
Yes, you are going to get cool.
And a
All right,
good
boys.
prop.
A lot of fun. I got a new prop kind of for Christmas already, so I appreciate that. You guys have a great time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the burgers again for the guests. Catch them up. Talk to you next time.
Hey, the music didn't cut you off that time.